And now, on BBC2, prepare yourself for a spine-tingling evening as we commence our Cinema Fantastic Double Bill series. Two tales of terror to chill your blood, rattle your bones, and leave you wondering what's lurking in the shadows. Are you and your fiefdom ready, Crab?
Hello, and thank you for inviting me into your homes once more. What did you say?
Are you and your fiefdom, Crab, ready to look, and look again at these glorious double bill movies that thrilled a generation? Films like these.
I feel discombobulated. You're just the continuity announcer from 1975.
I know I am, but I have been trapped in limbo for decades and need the gig. I need the odd shilling for the meter, a new pair of flared trousers as mine are worn round the crutch. Oh, and a bottle of Blue Nun would be pleasant. So, are you and your fiefdom happy for me to introduce these ghoulish gems for us?
Please? Bloody hell, I must have slipped down a wormhole or something. Am I, dear viewer, now trapped in continuity amber?
No shit, Sherlock. Don't worry, dear viewer. He'll get over it. Welcome to BBC2 and their legendary horror double bills spanning 1975 to 1983. I am so excited to be back at work again and won't need to sail that kidney. Roll the credits.
If you are of a certain age, from a particular generation, one blessed enough to have grown up in a time when the BBC still had a shred of cultural worth, then you'll remember those glorious horror double bills of our childhoods. They were, dear viewer, a rite of passage, an initiation into the shadowy realms of the macabre. Maybe you caught them when your parents thought you were safely tucked up in bed, the glow of the television flickering against the walls like a ghostly candlelight. Maybe you watched them sprawled on the sofa while they dozed, unaware of the dark wonders seeping into your young imagination. Or perhaps you stumbled upon them in the bleary aftermath of a Saturday night piss-up at the Dog and Duck, a can in hand as Vincent Price or Boris Karloff whispered nightmares or hammed it up into the early hours. However they found you, or you them, these films weren't just entertainment, they were essential. They thrilled us, unsettled us, and more than anything, they shaped us. For those of us with a love for horror, science fiction, and fantasy, these double bills weren't just movies, they were our weekly communion with Gothic cinema, a portal into strange and forbidden worlds, a foundation upon which a lifetime of obsession was built. And so here we are, looking back. Not just for nostalgia's sake, though let's not deny ourselves that pleasure, but to revisit some of these classics with fresh eyes. These films, whether you caught the double bills at their beginning, their peak, or in the twilight years of their run, were the very bricks and mortar of our childhood imagination. The foundations of our love for the arcane, the eerie, the tragic, and the grotesque. They were never just movies, they were glimpses into something grander, something fascinating, hypnotic, inescapable. Back then, aside from the UK's commercial channels, the BBC actually understood that horror and fantasy had a dedicated audience, one that would come crawling out of the woodwork for the right kind of chills. This revelation surfaced in the wake of their annual Ghost Story for Christmas tradition and continued with the now iconic M.R. James adaptations. It seems that somewhere in the dusty halls of Broadcasting House at the time, a light bulb flickered on. There was an appetite for the eerie, a thirst for the strange, and for once the powers that be at the BBC actually noticed. And so what better way to feed that hunger than with a regular, celebratory season of horror, science fiction, and fantasy cinema, a true annual event. Now, dear viewer, bear in mind this was the mid-70s. People had only just wrapped their heads around colour television, let alone the sorcery of the video cassette recorder. If you missed a film back then, tough luck. It was gone, vanished into the ether. The boom of rental shops, the joy of taping and rewatching your favourites on demand, that was still 6 or 7 years away. Back then, if you wanted to see these classics, you had to be there. And we were. The horror double bills aired on Saturday nights, often on those warm, balmy summer evenings, perhaps as a way to cool our blood. And what better way to pay homage to the golden age of cinema double features from the 50s and 60s, the era of glorious, shameless cinematic exploitation, than by bringing them into our living rooms. For sheer class alone, what better place to showcase these films than a dedicated slot on BBC2? Back then, BBC2 was very much the serious channel, a haven for the studious, the highbrow, and the quietly refined. It wasn't exactly the place you'd expect to find ghouls, vampires, and things that go bump in the night. Because these films were handled by the BBC's own well-funded, straight-laced film department, they weren't just slapped onto the schedule as an afterthought. No, they were treated with a level of care and reverence. The best prints available at the time were tracked down and presented to us in all their atmospheric glory. And there were some real firsts, moments that stopped horror fans in their tracks. The Technicolor ballroom sequence in The Phantom of the Opera, unveiled in all its decadent splendour, or the full, uncut version of Hammer's Kiss of the Vampire. No butchered edits here, no missing frames, just the film as it was meant to be seen. It was a rare thing, genre cinema treated with genuine respect, and for those of us lucky enough to have been there, it was nothing short of magic. Each season of horror double bills had a connective thread, sometimes obvious, sometimes a little tenuous, but always appreciated. The emphasis was on contrast and progress, showcasing how the genre evolved. Across 7 glorious seasons, the tradition unfolded. It all began with Season 1, the midnight movie fantastic double bill, setting the tone for what was to come. Then Season 2 brought us the sinister delights of Masters of Terror. By Season 3, we were rubbing shoulders with the greats in Dracula, Frankenstein and Friends, while Season 4 offered up a deliciously monstrous feast with the monster double bill. Season 5 saw the return of those legendary Masters of Terror, before Season 6 and 7 distilled everything down to the essentials, simply and triumphantly titled The Horror Double Bill. So, join me as we take another look at these classics with capsule reviews and a touch of mock continuity, and oh, how I miss that warm, authoritative embrace of received pronunciation. Don't get me wrong, I adore every accent, but there was something about those rich, steady tones that made it feel as though, for that brief moment, we were receiving a silver service experience, no matter our own backgrounds or voices. Dear retro BBC. So let's go back, whether to rediscover the inner child who cowered behind the sofa, or the lager-infused fug post-pub of a late-night horror binge. Let's sink once more into that shimmering lake of retro wonder that was the horror double bill. Let me spoil you, dear viewer.
This is BBC2. And now we raise the curtain on the uncanny as we begin our midnight movie fantastic double bill. Just after midnight, we journey to a Britain under siege where Professor Quatermass faces an invasion from the stars. Brian Donlevy stars in Quatermass 2. But first, a descent into the eerie world of German Expressionism, a masterpiece from 1919 presented in a special restoration that faithfully recreates the haunting atmospheric color tinting of its original release. Dare you enter the cabinet of Dr. Caligari?
In the shadowed alleys of Holstenwall, a sinister figure arrives, a mesmerist named Dr. Caligari, bringing with him a sleepwalker called Cesare, who is locked in a trance-like state. When a series of brutal murders grip the town, suspicion turns to the eerie duo. Francis, a young man seeking answers, watches in horror as Cesare, under Caligari's control, is sent to kill again. But as Francis delves deeper, reality begins to fracture. What is real, and what are the hallucinations of a broken mind? Few films have left as haunting a mark on cinema as The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and what a first film to launch the BBC2 double bill season on Saturday the 2nd of August 1975. It's a nightmarish descent into madness. This German expressionist masterpiece redefined the visual language of horror and psychological thrillers. Theme-wise, we have the big screen brought to the small one, and in Quatermass 2, the following movie, it's the opposite. Directed by Robert Wiener, Caligari is celebrated for its surreal, angular set designs, jagged buildings, twisted streets, and looming shadows, all painted directly onto the backdrops. This wasn't just an aesthetic choice, it reflected the film's themes of insanity and distorted perception, plunging the audience into an unsettling dreamscape. The film stars Werner Krauss as Dr. Caligari and Conrad Veidt as Cesare, the somnambulist and the original emo kid whose ghostly sleepwalking presence became iconic. It was one of the very first films to feature a jump scare, a tactic to unsettle the audience, still used to this very day. Thank you, Herr Wiener. The original script by Hans Janowitz and Karl Mayer was meant as a scathing critique of authoritarianism. However, the film's twist ending was reportedly a studio-mandated change, undermining its subversive message. Beyond its psychological horror, Caligari shaped cinema itself. Its distorted sets and exaggerated performances inspired generations of filmmakers and influenced James Whale in his interpretation of the Frankenstein legend in 1931. Some shots are quite similar. Over a century later, its influence still lingers. As mentioned, the movie was screened with its original colour tinting when shown on BBC2. A hypnotic fever dream of a film, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is a masterpiece of German expressionism. The jagged, twisted sets, heavy shadows and surreal painted backdrops create a world that for me feels like a living hallucination, utterly mesmerising and decades ahead of its time. On the downside, its silent era pacing may test modern audiences, and the exaggerated performances, while fitting for the era, can sometimes verge on theatrical excess, but scenery chewing can still be seen in our modern times. Look at soap operas. But these are small quibbles, to be honest with you, dear viewer, for a film that pioneered horror and psychological storytelling. A landmark in horror cinema history, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is as visually stunning as it is unsettling. Once seen, never forgotten. It gets a 4 out of 5 from me. Mysterious meteorites rain down over rural England, and Professor Quatermass uncovers something deeply disturbing. This leads him to a top-secret government facility, an eerie dome-like structure identical to his own abandoned moon-base designs. But the officials inside aren't just secretive. They're cold, detached, inhuman. Quatermass realizes the meteorites aren't just space debris. They're carrying something alive, infiltrating and controlling those in power. With paranoia mounting and an alien conspiracy tightening its grip, Quatermass must race against time to stop an invasion that has already begun. Well, I know I covered this in my Hammer Odyssey, but such greats such as this film deserves a second look. This is a chilling blend of science fiction and Cold War paranoia. Quatermass 2 took the groundwork laid by its predecessor and escalated it for me into a full-scale alien infiltration. The film, based on Nigel Neal's groundbreaking BBC television serial, brought back Brian Donlevy as the no-nonsense Professor Quatermass, though his brusque, hard-drinking portrayal was a far cry from the more intellectual version Neal originally envisioned, something the writer never quite forgave Hammer films for, and something Donlevy didn't try too hard to portray. Directed by Val Guest, the film maintains a pseudo-documentary feel, heightening its realism with handheld camera work and location shooting at an oil refinery, giving the mysterious alien complex an unsettling industrial bleakness. Ticks all boxes for me. Unlike the gothic horror Hammer would soon become famous for, Quatermass 2 leaned into sci-fi noir, its moody black and white cinematography evoking a world where authority cannot be trusted and the enemy is already among us. Interestingly, the film's themes of political infiltration and mind control eerily mirrored real-world fears of the time: McCarthyism, nuclear anxieties, and the ever-present spectre of Soviet subversion. Even its depictions of government conspiracies felt alarmingly plausible. Though not as commercially lauded as its later Hammer horrors, Quatermass 2 remains a cult favourite, influencing everything from Doctor Who to The X-Files. Its mix of creeping dread and bureaucratic horror cemented it as a sci-fi classic. I absolutely love this film. Quatermass 2 is a masterclass in slow-burning paranoia, perfectly capturing the creeping horror of an unseen invasion. The contrast between the quiet, bucolic countryside and the looming, sterile industrial complex is a perfect, unsettling contrast, like the natural world being engulfed by something truly alien for me. I like the way it traps you in its atmosphere of secrecy and confinement, making every interaction feel like a step further into a vast conspiracy. For a 1957 sci-fi film, the effects are pretty decent. Oozing alien organisms, ominous domes, and explosive action. What more could you want? Few films capture the fear of losing control, of being outnumbered en masse, quite like this one. I can remember my dad watching the original BBC television version of Quatermass 2 and still used to tell me about the bit where the man cracks the meteorite in half and his face gets burnt. So these sort of images, they really do work and they really do linger. Quatermass 2 isn't just a great science fiction film, it's a great horror film snuggled in a sci-fi jerkin. It gets 5 out of 5 from me. Love it.
Look on that.
This is BBC2. We continue our midnight movie fantastic double bill, delving once more into horror cinema. Tonight we explore the macabre imagination of Edgar Allan Poe, brought vividly to life on screen. At midnight, Ray Milland and Hazel Court star in The Premature Burial, a chilling tale of fear, fate, and the horrors of being entombed alive. But first, Lawrence Payne and Adrienne Corry lead us into a nightmarish world of guilt and madness. In Poe's harrowing tale of obsession and unraveling sanity, The Telltale Heart.
In a dark and brooding tale of obsession and madness, Edgar Marsh, a lonely and repressed bachelor, becomes infatuated with his beautiful new neighbour Betty. His desire soon festers into something far more dangerous when he sees her in the arms of another man. Consumed by jealousy and tormented by his own insecurities, Edgar descends into a murderous rage, eliminating his rival in cold blood. But no crime goes unpunished, not when guilt takes on a life of its own. As Edgar becomes unhinged, the sound of his victim's heartbeat begins to echo in his ears, growing louder, more insistent, more maddening. The walls are closing in as Edgar finds there is no escape from the horrors that lurk within his own mind.
Your attention, please. To those who are squeamish or react nervously to shock, we suggest that when you hear this sound, close your eyes and do not look at the screen again until it stops.
The Telltale Heart, made in 1960, is an eerie and all but forgotten gem, an atmospheric, unsettling adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe's classic tale of guilt and madness. Unlike other interpretations, this version expands the short story into a full-length descent into obsession, jealousy, and murder, blending a little bit of gothic horror with the intimacy of a psychological thriller. Directed by Ernest Morris, the film takes creative liberties, shifting the focus from an old man with a vulture eye to a tortured love triangle. Lawrence Payne delivers an intense and commendable performance, the socially inept and increasingly unhinged protagonist, while Adrienne Corry, a bit of a scream queen on the quiet, brings both charm and tragic allure as the object of his infatuation. Visually, the film leans into its low-budget constraints, using deep shadows, claustrophobic framing, and a creeping sense of dread to evoke Edgar's spiralling madness. The film was made on a shoestring budget after all. While it lacks the grand operatic style of Hammer horror, it makes up for it with sheer psychological weight. Its oppressive atmosphere gives it a claustrophobic milieu. Sadly, The Telltale Heart never reached the same cult status as other Poe adaptations of the era. Released in the wake of Roger Corman's lavish Vincent Price-led Poe films, it was largely overshadowed and faded into obscurity. Yet, for those willing to seek it out, it remains an unnerving and overlooked treasure. I enjoyed it, and I'll give it a 3 out of 5 from me. Haunted by a terrible family curse, Guy Carrel is consumed by a singular, all-consuming fear, being buried alive, convinced that his cataleptic condition will one day lead to his premature entombment. He becomes obsessed with cheating death, designing a crypt filled with escape mechanisms to ensure his survival. As those around him try to ease his mind, strange events begin to unfold. Scratching sounds in the night and resting places disturbed. Is this madness creeping in, or is his fate truly sealed? When terror takes hold, can even the most elaborate precautions prevent the grave from claiming its next victim? A standout in American International Pictures' Edgar Allan Poe's cycle, The Premature Burial is a masterclass in lurid melodrama and dread. While often overshadowed by the other American International Picture entries, this Roger Corman chiller is an eerie psychological horror with a brooding gothic atmosphere. Originally, Corman aimed to break free from AIP's grip with this one, but the studio swiftly took control, keeping the film within its signature Poe-series. Despite this, The Premature Burial stands apart. Its suffocating tension, dreamlike visuals, and obsession with death, creating a uniquely unsettling experience. Ray Milland, stepping into a role seemingly tailor-made for Price, delivers a slow-burning, paranoid performance that makes Guy Carrel's descent into madness all the more hokey for me. Opposite him, we have the lovely Hazel Court, an undeniable scream queen, and she shines, adding further levels to the film's swirling, misty tragi-drama. Visually, it's classic Corman, gaudy primary colours, fog-laced graveyards, and crepuscular crypts, fetid with a doom-pulsing heaviness. Its recurring imagery, coffins, silent suffocation, and the ever-present fear of the grave, taps into a primal, claustrophobic terror. Often dismissed as a lesser entry, The Premature Burial is a feverish, macabre Poe adaptation that deserves reappraisal and applauded for the haunting tragedy it is. 3 out of 5 for this one.
Can you possibly conceive it? The unendurable oppression of the lungs, the stifling fumes of the damp earth, the rigid embrace of the coffin, the blackness of absolute night, and the silence, like an overwhelming sea. And then, invisible in the darkness, but all too hideously real to the other senses, the presence of the conqueror worm.
And now on BBC2, our fantastic double bill, an evening of spectacle and storytelling where legend and history collide. From director Michael Curtis, a sweeping epic that bridges two great cataclysms. The tale of Noah and his ark, his divine warning and fateful preparation, finds its echo centuries later in the story of a family on the brink of another deluge, the Great War. Noah's Ark follows shortly. Then, at 12:20, we journey back to the dawn of time, where Victor Mature and Carol Landis battle prehistoric monsters in a primal struggle for love and survival in man and his mate. But first, we set sail on the floodwaters of destiny. It's time to board Noah's Ark.
As World War I engulfs the world, a group of travellers aboard the Orient Express to France finds themselves involved with a train derailment, and a handful of survivors find their destinies entwined. Amid love, betrayal and sacrifice, their struggles mirror a far older story, that of Noah, chosen by God to build an ark and survive an impending flood sent to cleanse a sinful world. As a great deluge begins, divine wrath is unleashed on an unimaginable scale. Can love and faith endure when the world itself is drowning, whether by the sea in biblical times, or in the 20th century by the blood of war? Noah's Ark stands as a testament to the grand ambitions and perilous practices of early Hollywood filmmaking. Directed by Michael Curtiz, this part-talkie epic sought to mingle the biblical tale of Noah with a contemporary World War I narrative, reflecting the era's fascination with grand storytelling and technological innovation. The film was conceived during the transitional period from silent cinema to talkies. Originally planned as a silent feature in 1926, it underwent significant revisions to incorporate synchronized sound sequences using the Vitaphone system. This adaptation resulted in a hybrid film, with most scenes remaining silent, accompanied by a synchronized musical score and sound effects, while select sequences featured audible, if not wooden, dialogue.
You can laugh all you want to, but here's what I've done. You can't do this, Al. Listen, old fellow. You can't go without me. You haven't forgotten. We promised to stick together. The only way we can stick together, Travis, is for you to go my way.
The production was monumental, involving approximately 7,500 extras. The climatic flood scene, intended to showcase the film's grandeur, became infamous for its lack of safety protocols. An estimated 600,000 gallons of water were unleashed. Allegedly, this led to tragic consequences. 3 extras allegedly drowned, one suffered a leg amputation, and numerous others sustained serious injuries. This incident underscored the industry's need for standardized safety regulations, which were subsequently implemented because of this movie. No shitty CGI here, and all the better for it. The film features actress Dolores Costello as the leading lady, who reportedly caught pneumonia due to the flood scenes whilst filming it, and watching her caught in the unfolding deluge, it's understandable. I believe the actress commented on the making of this film with 3 words: flood, mud, and blood. Enough said. Alongside Costello are the talents of then heartthrob George O'Brien as a leading man, and his buddy, played by Gwyn Big Boy Williams. The nickname Big Boy is due to his height and stature, a physique built up due to his cattle ranching days, and a euphemism for nothing else, as far as we know. We all know what the casting couch was like back then. Notably, a young John Wayne appeared as an extra in the flood scene and reportedly narrowly escaped drowning. Myrna Loy crops up as a slave girl, but I think it's a blink and miss performance. Upon its release, Noah's Ark received a polarised reception. While some praised its visual spectacle, others criticised its garbled narrative, to which I disagree with. The Sydney Morning Herald lauded the cinematography, but lambasted the rambling narrative and tawdry and ostentatious pageant of the Ark sequences, rather pithy. Financially, despite its substantial budget of over $1 million, the film grossed more than $2.3 million worldwide, with a significant portion from foreign markets. Noah's Ark is often viewed as Warner Brothers' attempt to emulate the grandeur of Cecil B. DeMille's biblical epics. While it achieved commercial success, the film's legacy is marred by the on-set tragedies. which served as a catalyst for the establishment of stunt safety standards in Hollywood. Today, the film is partially lost. The original 135-minute version is believed to be gone completely, but current existing restorations run approximately 108 minutes. The version screened on BBC2 as part of the double bill seems to be the truncated 75-minute version, which was churned out for television syndication from an early 1952 re-release. Noah's Ark exemplifies the ambitious spirit of late 1920s Hollywood, straddling the silent and sound eras while tackling grand narratives. Its production challenges, critical reception, and lasting impact on industry safety protocols render it a significant, albeit controversial piece of cinematic history. Well, viewer, to be honest with you, I absolutely love this movie and the parallels it draws. It does seem far removed from where we are with entertainment now, but the story seems as prescient today as it was back then, to be honest with you. For me, it was absorbing and a fascinating melodrama of two halves. The effects are decent model shots, and Curtiz, who went on to direct such celebrated greats as Casablanca, Dr. X, and a personal favourite of mine, Mysteries of the Wax Museum, excels here with his trademark leitmotifs, such as elaborate tracking shots and his use of shadows and silhouettes that filmically are on display, not just for mood, but to reflect psychological or moral conflict, and should be applauded. The deluge sequence is an absolute corker. Curtiz is a director that is known for showing emotion under pressure, told with visual elegance, and in Noah's Ark, it's plain to see. He didn't always get the credit during his life because he was more of a studio director than a rebellious auteur, but his fingerprints are all over Hollywood's golden age. It's well worth seeking out this film, because it's a silent or three-quarters silent movie. Don't let that put you off. It really does, for me, deserve much more kudos. So for the score for this film, a well-deserved 4 out of 5. It's great. In a savage prehistoric world where survival was brutal and mercy is rare, Tumac, a fierce but outcast warrior of the warlike Rock tribe, is cast into the wilderness after defying his father, the tribe's ruthless leader. Lost and alone, he battles deadly beasts and the unforgiving elements until he stumbles upon the peaceful Shell tribe, an advanced people who live with kindness rather than cruelty. There he meets Loana, a woman who shows him a very different way of life, but Tumac's past is never far behind. As tempers clash and rivalries ignite, the brutal forces of nature rise in fury. Earthquakes shake the land, volcanoes erupt, and prehistoric creatures prowl. In a world ruled by primal instincts, can Tumac bridge the gap between savagery and civilization, or will the past drag him back into the darkness? 1,000,000 BC, made in 1940, is a fascinating relic from Hollywood's golden age, offering a glimpse into the industry's ambitious and sometimes questionable attempts at prehistoric storytelling. Directed by Hal Roach and his son Hal Roach Jr., if the plot sounds mighty familiar, dear viewer, it's because this film predates the more widely recognised 1966 Hammer production 1 Million Years BC remake, starring the delicious Raquel Welch. Originally, legendary director D.W. Griffith was at the helm, but he departed early in the process, leading to the Roach duo taking over directorial duties. Notably, 1 Million BC is also known by alternative titles such as Caveman, Tumat, and Man and His Mate. The latter, Man and His Mate, was used during its screening on BBC2 in the UK as part of the horror double bill alongside Noah's Ark. Victor Mature stars as Tumac, portraying the quintessential rugged caveman with a chiselled physique and a perpetual scowl. Carol Landis plays Luana, the shell-tribed maiden who introduces Tumac to a more civilised way of life. Rumour has it that Landis was being knocked off by Hal Roach Jr. during filming. The film's special effects were groundbreaking for its time, earning an Academy Award nomination. However, modern audiences might find the use of live reptiles with prosthetic enhancements to simulate dinosaurs both unconvincing and ethically dubious, especially in some of the gore scenes. I think that blood is actually real. These scenes, while innovative in 1940, raised contemporary concerns about animal welfare and cinematic fakery. Those reptiles don't look too happy to me, and is probably why the screenings of the movie are rare, and in times such as these, highly unlikely to be shown on any channel anytime soon. Bah, snowflakes. Critically, 1 Million BC received mixed reviews. The New York Times praised it as a masterpiece of imaginative fiction, while Variety dismissed it as corny. Such polarised opinions suggest that the film was either ahead of its time or simply a prehistoric mess. In retrospect, 1 Million BC serves as a testament to Hollywood's perpetual fascination with the prehistoric era and its willingness to push technology of the time and ethical boundaries. 1 Million BC is most certainly a first of its kind in the cavemen sagas, picked up by Hammer 2 decades later. I always thought that the Hammer films were the pioneers to use caveman babble, but was proved wrong with this. The dinosaurs really are surprisingly effective. Real elephants in fur for mammoths and pigs in prosthetics for other dinosaurs are surprisingly effective for a movie of this vintage. Another enjoyable romp, earning a well-deserved 3 out of 5 from me.
And now on BBC2, our fantastic double bill ventures beyond the stars into the realms of science fiction and fantasy. In just a moment, Jeff Morrow faces an intergalactic menace bent on Earth's destruction. Can he stop the impending doom and save humanity? Find out in This Island Earth. Then, just after midnight, Roger Vadim brings us a psychedelic vision of the future, where space-age adventure meets swinging 60s decadence. Jane Fonda and David Hemmings star in Barbarella. But first, a showcase of imaginative 1950s special effects as we embark on a journey to This Island Earth.
Dr. Cal Meacham, a brilliant and confident physicist, receives a mysterious set of components and instructions for a strange, otherworldly device. Driven by curiosity and scientific instinct, he assembles it, only to find himself in contact with the cryptic and the oddly serene Exeter, who invites him to a remote research facility working on advanced energy projects. When Cal arrives there, he meets Dr. Ruth Adams, a former colleague who acts as though they've never met. Along with a handful of other elite scientists, they begin to realise that things at the facility aren't quite what they seem. The tech is too advanced, the answers too vague, and Exeter's team not exactly human. As suspicions mount, the truth is finally revealed. Exeter and his associates are aliens from the planet Metaluna, locked in a desperate war with the insectoid Zargons. Earth's greatest minds have been quietly recruited to help stop their civilization from collapsing, but not everyone involved has a choice in the matter. As Cal and Ruth are taken far beyond the Earth's atmosphere and into the heart of an alien conflict, they're faced with questions bigger than science, about trust, survival, and the cost of getting involved in a war that isn't theirs. What awaits them on Metaluna, and will they ever find their way home?
I'm sorry. I'd hoped to prepare you somewhat beforehand. This is a mutant. We've been breeding them here for ages to do menial work.
This Island Earth originated from a serialized science fiction novel by Raymond F. Jones. It first appeared in serialized form in Thrilling Wonder Stories, a popular pulp sci-fi magazine of the time, across 3 issues, June, August and October of 1949. The original title was the same as the film, This Island Earth, and it featured much of the core concept that the movie would later adapt: advanced alien technology, a secretive recruitment of Earth's scientists, and a broader interstellar conflict. However, there are some notable differences. The serialized story dives more into the philosophical and political angles of alien intervention, with more detail on the alien cultures and a slightly more intricate portrayal of Earth's role in the galactic pecking order. The film simplifies and streamlines a lot of that to focus on action, visuals, and the more immediate man meets alien dynamic. Universal Pictures saw it as an opportunity to elevate the genre beyond B-movie fare. It became one of the studio's first major science fiction features shot in full Technicolor, uncommon for the era and a statement of intent. They were aiming for prestige science fiction, not just Saturday matinee filler. Joseph M. Newman directed most of the film, bringing a restrained, almost theatrical style, static camera setup, symmetrical staging, and a clinical feel that matched the sterile scientific environments. But when the project moved into its more effects-heavy final act, Newman reportedly struggled with the pace and scope of it. Universal brought in Jack Arnold, already known for Creature from the Black Lagoon, to direct key scenes, especially on the planet Metaluna. Though uncredited, Arnold added a more cinematic and visually dynamic touch that helped the film's final third feel bigger and more kinetic. Clifford Stein's cinematography leaned heavily on colour to create atmosphere, bright blues and greens for the alien tech, warm glows for Earth settings. The deep saturation and sharp contrasts gave the film a comic book feel, perfect for the otherworldly pulp visuals. It set a visual benchmark for science fiction films of the time. Rex Reason was cast as Carl Meacham, and had a voice so deep and polished, the studio briefly considered dubbing him, thinking it sounded too good to be believable. Faith Domergue, in the role of Ruth Adams, came to the film via a contract originally tied to Howard Hughes, who tried to shape her into a Hollywood starlet. She was transitioning into more genre work by the time this film came along. Jeff Morrow, who played Exeter, had to deliver serious lines while wearing a prominent forehead prosthetic and acting opposite a guy in a bulky rubber mutant suit. He reportedly struggled to keep a straight face during filming, especially during the scenes where the mutant had to lurch dramatically across the set, barely able to walk. The Metaluna mutant itself was added late in production at the studio's insistence. They felt the film lacked a proper monster. The creature design was striking, but the costume was heavy and nearly immobile, limiting what they could do with it on screen. Still, it became the film's most iconic image, dominating the posters and the marketing. At the box office, This Island Earth performed well, but it wasn't a runaway hit, but respectable enough. It earned back its budget and reinforced the idea that science fiction could be more than just cheap thrills. The tension between Newman's more reserved direction and the studio's push for spectacle created a film that's equal parts cerebral and equal parts campy. For me, dear viewer, This Island Earth had all the ingredients to be a bona fide sci-fi classic. Aliens, interplanetary war, brainy scientists, even a mutant with a bug-eyed rubber face. When I first watched it, I was genuinely expecting a creature feature, some monstrous mayhem, a bit of chaos. But instead I got a lot of long stares, men in lab coats talking about ion propulsion, and a mutant that shuffled about, waiting to topple over any minute, really. Admittedly, it's visually striking for 1955, I'll give it that. The Technicolor pops and some of the effects are charmingly ambitious, but charming doesn't mean compelling. The pacing drags for me at times, and the third act, which should be pure science fiction gold, somehow wraps up like a dull fart in a crowded room, lingering, and you can't escape the stink of wasted potential. It's not terrible, mind you, it's just kind of there. It straddles that line between serious and silly without ever fully committing to either, and the result is something that left my mind wandering on occasion. So taking all this into account, This Island Earth gets just 2 stars out of 5 from me. I do question with this film what really all the fuss is about.
Exeter, are these troops strong enough to keep him out?
Possibly. He's bleeding badly. In a very few moments, the pressure should destroy him.
Barbarella! Barbarella!
It's the 41st century, and fearless astronaut Barbarella is sent on a crucial mission by the President of Earth to locate the missing scientist Durand. Durand has developed the dangerous positronic ray, a weapon of immense power that could threaten the galaxy. Barbarella's journey takes her to the frigid planet Lithium, where she is rescued by the resourceful Mark Hand after a vicious attack by hostile killer dolls with razor-sharp gnashers. As a token of her gratitude, Barbarella gets fruity with Mark, and some pillow talk reveals to her that Durand is most likely hiding in the notorious city of night called Sogo. Determined to stop the scientist's evil plans, Barbarella ventures into Sogo, a city ruled by excess and corruption. Along the way, she faces perilous encounters, including teaming up with the blind, mojoless angel Pygar, battling the sinister Bidike, the Black Queen, and surviving various bizarre and sexual traps designed to torment her. As Barbarella pushes forward, her mission to stop Durand becomes a thrilling and sometimes provocative adventure where both courage and sensuality are tested in the name of saving planet Earth. Released in 1968, Barbarella, based on the French comic strip by Jean-Claude Forest from 1962, is a tour de force in camp kitsch space opera. I wanted to dedicate a whole programme to this, and may do so in the future, as it is one of my top 10 favourite films of all time. However, I'm hoping, dear viewer, this will suffice at the moment. Directed by Roger Vadim, the film is a testament to his unique vision. Vadim was known for pushing boundaries, both in terms of sexuality and in the way he approached filmmaking, and Barbarella is a product of that audacious energy. Vadim had previously worked with Brigitte Bardot and was known for his experimental approach to cinema, which is clearly evident in this work. The film has a light-hearted and surreal direction that mirrors the tone of the era's artistic experimentation, aligning with the social and political upheaval of the time. 1967, the year the film was created, around about that time, was a year of significant societal revolution. The counterculture was in full swing, with the hippie movement, protests, and the general rise of a more liberated, anti-authoritarian ethos. Barbarella, in many ways, mirrored these values, offering up a strong independent female lead, Chemical Living.
What is it?
Essence of man.
Essence of man?
Yeah.
Fighting against oppressive forces and exploring sexual freedom without shame. It's in all the world that Vadim had a tick box of everything the 1960s would be known for in terms of pop culture and through rose-tinted spectacles, and Barbarella is a celebration for me of all that and more. The movie also was released at exactly the right time when what could be shown at the cinema in terms of sex and sexuality was becoming much more liberal, much more emancipated. The film's visual style, with cinematography by the innovative and visionary Claude Renoir, was revolutionary, an embodiment of the psychedelic era's aesthetic. Bright colours, surreal landscapes, and imaginative set design dominate the film, often mixing high art with a sense of campy fun. The production's look drew heavily from pop art movements and the culture of the 60s. Renoir's cinematography was key to bringing these worlds to life, making each new environment Barbarella stumbles into feel distinct, exaggerated, and dripping with groovy visual flair. Even the Mathmos is an all-engulfing, globular lava lamp. The costumes, designed by Jacques Fonterey, were iconic in their own right, most notably Barbarella's figure-hugging spacesuit that became synonymous with the character. These outfits, along with the film's wildly imaginative set pieces, embodied the experimental and liberating spirit of the era. Despite its hodgepodge nature, there's something unmistakably magnetic about Barbarella. It's a film that thrives on its weirdness and its refusal to adhere to genre norms. In fact, the film's freewheeling nature has earned comparisons to the movie Danger Diabolique. Directed by Mario Bava, another film from the same period based on a comic strip. Both films share much of the same cast and crew, including John Philip Law and producer Dino De Laurentiis. While Danger Diabolique remains a more straightforward action film, Barbarella leans fully into the absurd, combining cosmic kitsch with a cheeky sense of humour. Jane Fonda takes the lead. Married to Vadim at the time, she is a fantastic muse that gives Vadim the opportunity to celebrate her just as much as the era in which this is being filmed. Her foil is the Black Queen, played by the gorgeous Anita Pallenberg, here dubbed for the sexy, huskier voice of Joan Greenwood for the film. Her entrance features one of the most iconic lines of the picture, and it's one hell of an entrance at that.
Hello, pretty. Hello. Thank you very much. Do you want to come and play with me? For someone like you, I charge nothing. You're very pretty.
Actor John Philip Law plays the part of Barbarella's angelic friend Pygar. Law, prior to this, is known for his heroic parts, and just prior to this movie had wrapped up filming Death Rides a Horse with Lee Van Cleef. Marlowe Shane takes the part as hysterical villain Durand, an inspiration that everybody knows for the name of the 1980s pop group, and relishes the part and gives it everything bar the mustachio twirling. Absolutely delightful. The young David Hemmings also appears riding high from the 1960s swinging film Blow Up, so what movie as a personification of the 60s dare not feature him? And in a rare cinematic appearance, Marcel Marceau pops up as Professor Ping, without the stark white face paint and the Breton top. This film, for me, has it all. The ultimate celebration of the kaleidoscopic 60s. Oh, and the soundtrack, by God, that's a corker. Courtesy of Bob Crewe and the Glitterhouse Band. An on-point soundtrack and perfect accompaniment to the action, blending jazz, pop and experimental soundscapes, further enhancing the film's outré atmosphere. So for me, Barbarella is an absolute treasure. A proper stoner movie, sucking you right in on a satyr cloud, whisking you round the cosmos before dumping you back on the ground, totally and grinningly satisfied. It will get from me now, as it always has, and always will be, a 5 out of 5 rating. If you've never seen it, what the fuck?
An angel does not make love, an angel is love.
Then you're a dead duck.
Tonight, our fantastic double bill takes a lighter turn through the world of the ghoulish and macabre. First, mystery and murder abound in a creaking old mansion as Bob Hope and Paulette Goddard navigate secrets, scares and skullduggery in Jacques Tourneur's The Cat and the Canary. Then, just after the witching hour, a trio of horror greats, Vincent Price, Basil Rathbone and Peter Lorre, serve up a wickedly dark dose of death and deception in the comedy of terrors. But now the shrieking starts, and the laughter begins with The Cat and the Canary.
A group of estranged relatives gather at a decaying, isolated mansion deep in the Louisiana bayou to hear the will of their long-dead eccentric millionaire uncle, 10 years after his passing. Tensions quickly rise when it's revealed that only one among them will inherit the fortune, provided they're deemed sane enough to do so. But as the night deepens, eerie events begin to unfold. Someone disappears, only for their corpse to turn up later. Claw-like hands emerge from concealed panels, and to top it all, a lunatic has escaped from the local loony bin, nicknamed the Cat, reportedly seen lurking in the area. With no way out, the guests must confront both their own paranoia and a very real threat stalking them in the dark. Can they survive the night, or will they become the next designated victims? By the time The Cat and the Canary slinked onto screens in 1939, the Hays Code had its claws fully dug into Hollywood. Gone were the heady days of pre-code mischief, and in their place, restraint, moral lessons, and absolutely no fun, unless it was respectable fun. That said, while this version tones down the sadism and eroticism of earlier cinema, I'm pleased to report it doesn't neuter the film's bite. There are still some genuinely spooky moments, nicely offset with a bit of winking comedy to keep the senses calm and the audience on edge. The story itself originates from John Willard's 1922 play, a gothic whodunit that quickly became a mainstay of the American stage. The first cinematic stab at the story came in 1927. Directed by Paul Leni, a Weimar-born visual stylist who brought his German expressionistic flair with him. That silent film was all looming shadows, sharp angles, and nightmarish lighting. You swear Nosferatu might leap out from behind the curtains. There's barely a laugh to be found, just mood, menace, and some brilliant spooky set pieces. It was the straight-up horror version of this story. Fast forward to 1939, and the Hollywood machine gives The Cat and the Canary a spit polish. Where the 1927 take was all dread and darkness, the 39 version adds a generous splash of screwball comedy. Less creak, creak, more wise cracks.
It's awful spooky down here. Do you believe in reincarnation?
Huh?
You know, that dead people come back.
You mean like the Republicans?
The cast here is key. We've got Bob Hope, still on the cusp of film stardom, bringing his signature blend of flustered charm and rapid-fire wit. This was actually his first lead role in a feature, and he runs with it, delivering quips with such speed. His humour, which occasionally nearly breaks the fourth wall, adds welcome relief on occasion. Opposite him is Paulette Goddard, cool, poised and unflappable. She'd already made a name for herself in modern times with Charlie Chaplin, and here she plays the perfect straight woman to Hope's jittery jester. Their chemistry is effortless. It's a real shame they only teamed up once again in The Ghost Breakers, which is a feature film arguably even better than this one. Together they carry this movie like a well-balanced seesaw. Hope wobbles, Goddard steadies. But let's talk about a scene stealer, dear viewer. The wonderful Gail Sondergaard as the eerie and elegant Chatelaine housekeeper Miss Lou. With her cool stare and enigmatic poise, she practically floats through the movie. One of the best moments when she muses mysteriously.
You ought to be glad. It must have been rather lonely here all these years.
I'm never lonely. I've got my friends.
Friends?
Yes, my friends. From the other world.
And later, when the lights flicker, she mutters with a delicious deadpan.
What happened?
Sometimes they get into the machinery.
Interestingly, Sondergaard was originally cast as the Wicked Witch in The Wizard of Oz in the same year, but backed out when the role was made into a grotesque caricature. She didn't want to be made hug ugly. Sondergaard's career, by the way, took a nosedive in the McCarthy era, guilt by association, thanks to her husband being one of the Hollywood 10. But long before the blacklist, she was a master of menace with elegance. A thinking person's villain. I rather like her. Also of note, this film marks the genre debut of the excellent George Zucco as the ever-serious and vaguely menacing lawyer Crosby. Director Elliot Nugent deserves credit here. He knows how to stage a scare. Another standout is Nugent's use of backlighting, especially in the climatic chase through the mansion's decaying crawl spaces. It's pure shadow theatre. Combine that with Charles Lang's luscious cinematography, Ernst Toch's nervy string score, and Hope's razor-sharp delivery, and you've got a film that knows exactly how to creep and charm in equal measure. The Cat and the Canary is a fine example of early horror comedy done right. It's short, sharp, and strangely cosy. I give it a solid 3 out of 5. A classic slice of Hollywood's haunted house era with enough mood, menace, and mirth to definitely warrant a rewatch. Waldo Trumbull is a perpetual piss artist and unscrupulous undertaker running a failing funeral business with his jittery assistant, Felix Gilly. Faced with overdue rent and a complete lack of clientele, Trumbull comes up with a wickedly clever solution. Create his own customers. As bodies begin to pile up, some more than once, Trumbull's schemes spiral into chaos, especially as his nagging wife, Amaryllis, and her catatonic father, Mr. Hinchley, adds to the household dysfunctionality. Things take a turn, though, when their wealthy landlord, Mr. Black, is targeted as the next client, but proves far more difficult to bury than expected. What follows is a ghoulishly farcical game of murder, mistaken deaths, and macabre mix-ups.
If my father chose to spend his hard-earned profits on the collection of curious objects, that
He
was
did
his
more
business,
than
wasn't
collect curious objects, madam. He also fathered one.
it? I despise you!
By the time the comedy of terrors arrived on screens in 1963, American International Pictures, AIP, was deep into its series of gothic horror hits. This entry marked the sixth in that celebrated run, but with a twist. Unlike the Poe-heavy fare that had defined earlier installments, this film took a bold detour into macabre comedy. Now, notably absent from the director's chair was Roger Corman, the series mastermind, who had gone to great lengths to avoid creative stagnation. After all, how many times could you resurrect Edgar Allan Poe without things getting a little consumptive? So after the bleak romanticism of The House of Usher and The Pit and the Pendulum, Corman had already begun injecting comedic tones, most notably in Tales of Terror and The Raven. By the time we reach the comedy of terrors, the horror is still present, but it's now filtered through a slapstick, often Shakespearean lens, courtesy of screenwriter Richard Matheson. Matheson, more famous for darker existential fare like I Am Legend, lets loose here with a script that mixes farce, funeral parlours and more than a soupçon of Hamlet at times, with emphasis on the ham in Rathbone's case. The result? Well, it's a gleefully grim rom. What really elevates this film, dear viewer, though, is the cast. AIP's leading man of the macabre, Vincent Price, leads the charge with wicked relish as Waldo Trumbull, a drunken, abusive, yet weirdly charming mortician who recycles coffins and bullies everyone around him.
Me to marry you? That is a question I often inquire of myself, madam, to which there is no satisfactory answer save one, perhaps, and that is that no one else would have you.
Only a man who drinks could talk like that.
We escape the unendurable however we can.
How I despise you.
Peter Lorre, returning as his reluctant partner in crime Felix Gilly, plays the straight man with wide-eyed gloom and understated pathos. Apparently, Lorre was dealing with health issues during production, but still managed to deliver his lines with trademark deadpan flair. Lorre passed away shortly after filming wrapped up on this movie. Then there's Boris Karloff. Though frail and suffering from chronic arthritis at the time, making him immobile, he gives a wonderfully befuddled performance as Trumbull's senile father-in-law, Amos Hinchley. Behind the scenes, Karloff reportedly had to perform many of his scenes seated or leaning, which actually added to the creaky charm of his character. It's a touch of unintentional realism, if you will. Now for the deliciously hammy turn from Basil Rathbone, Mr. Black, the rent-obsessed landlord with a penchant for Shakespeare and the annoying habit of refusing to stay dead. Rathbone was nearing the end of his career here, but, dear viewer, he chews the scenery like a man who knows it's his last good feast. There are reports that Rathbone had an absolute ball with the role, revelling in the theatricality and quoting the bard with the enthusiasm of a man 3 gins deep at a dinner party. It was also reported that Rathbone would tell filthy anecdotes and jokes, but never revealing the punchline, leaving the cast and crew in a state of giggling wonder, trying to figure out the big reveal. Joyce Jameson, as Trumbull's shrill wife Amaryllis, adds another layer of domestic disharmony, while a blink and you'll miss it cameo by Joe E. Brown, the same man from Some Like It Hot, as a graveyard keeper, adds an extra bit of fun for the audience. Behind the camera, director Jacques Tourneur, famous for atmospheric classics like Cat People and I Walked with a Zombie, more on those later, wasn't exactly at the peak of his career. He's been making peplum in Spain and dabbling in TV around this time, but here he shows a remarkable flair for comic timing and visual gags. Working alongside cinematographer Floyd Crosby, a veteran of the AIP stable, Tourneur delivers some surprisingly moody lighting and a few subtle horror touches that harken back to the Val Lewton school of filmmaking. And let's not forget the score. Composer Les Baxter provides a playful, slightly off-kilter score that dances nimbly between suspense and silliness, a soundtrack that perfectly underscores the film's tonality. The film didn't perform as well at the box office as previous entries, perhaps due to its overtly comedic nature. Audiences expecting another Poe adaptation were instead treated to what felt like a horror-tinged version of Arsenic and Old Lace. Roger Corman was rather surreptitiously brought back for the next entry in the series, The Mask of the Red Death, to steer things back into darker territory, and gave us one of AIP's finest moments in producing a classic of the horror film. Still, the Comedy of Terrors stands today as a gem among the AIP Gothic films. After viewing this, I would say it's a recommended watch, dear viewer, especially if you like your horror with a hearty side of gallows humour. So it gets a 3 out of 5 from myself. Très amusante.
Oh, no, you don't.
Oh, yes.
Leave me alone.
Oh, yes, we do. Oh, yes, we do. Oh, yes,
Let me
we
alone.
do. Ah, he bit me. The son of a bit me.
Get me out of here.
Hand me that mallet.
Let me
Give me that.
out of
And now on BBC2 we come to the final instalment in our current season exploring the frightening and the fantastical. First, Peter Lorre and Robert Alder find themselves at the mercy of a sinister, disembodied force in the beast with 5 fingers. Then, at midnight, we journey to the mist-shrouded moors of Scotland, where an unexpected inheritance unveils a chilling secret. Richard Carlson and Veronica Hurst star in The Maze. But now, prepare for some 5-fingered fear with the beast with 5 fingers.
In a decaying Italian villa, the death of renowned pianist Francis Ingram sets off a storm of greed, suspicion and fear. Those closest to him, his nurse Julie, assistant Conrad, scheming nephew Raymond, and eccentric astrologer Hilary, gather to pick through his estate, but something far stranger than inheritance disputes begin to unfold. Rumours swirl of Ingram's obsession with the occult, and when his lifeless hand vanishes from the crypt, a wave of terror grips the household. One by one, they begin to suspect that the disembodied hand may be exacting vengeance from beyond the grave.
Francis Ingram's a hand.
The Beast with 5 Fingers stands as the final gasp of Hollywood's classic Gothic horror era in the 1940s. After a belle epoque that began with Dracula in 1931, horror began to lose favour with studios by this time, edged out by noir, war dramas and the rising demand for realism. Censorship had tightened, the monsters were out, and psychological torment was in. This film is a curious relic of that transition. What begins as a traditional old dark house mystery with this movie soon spirals into something stranger and unnervingly surreal. Based on a short story by British writer W.F. Harvey, the original tale is barely more than a haunting anecdote, so screenwriter Kurt Siodmak, who also penned The Wolfman, had to get creative. He expanded the setup into a full-blown chamber piece of greed, envy, obsession, and mental collapse. Special effects of the era being what they were, it's remarkable how well these sequences hold up today. The use of travelling mats and some of the same sleight-of-hand tricks pioneered in The Invisible Man from 1933 helped sell the illusion. And credit where credit's due, the thing is genuinely creepy. One of the more striking elements is the cinematography. Robert Florey, the director, and cameraman Wesley Anderson use sharp Dutch angles and deep theatrical shadows to play up the psychological unravelling at the story's heart. There's a brilliant scene where the character Hilary appears behind Julie, seemingly emerging from the darkness, a trick done via mirror reflection that still delivers a bit of a jolt. Peter Lorre here delivers a masterclass in anxious obsession as the astrologer Hilary Cummins. Lorre's performance is all bulbous eyes and dread. In several scenes he acts entirely opposite the disembodied hand and somehow convinces you it's alive. Laurie by the mid-1940s was in a pretty bad way, both in terms of career and personal life. He'd been battling a morphine addiction since the 1930s, a habit he picked up after surgery in Vienna, and while he went cold turkey at times, the struggle followed him. During the shoot of The Beast with Five Fingers, it's been alleged he was either back on the stuff, hitting the source, or simply unravelling from years of typecasting and fighting his own personal demons. Director Robert Florey supposedly let him go wild, maybe because he knew that whatever Laurie brought, even if chemically inspired, was going to be more interesting than anything on the page. The result? Laurie's Hilary feels less like a man descending into madness and more like someone who's already there. J. Carrol Naish pops up late in the film as Inspector Castellano, injecting some much-needed levity into an otherwise sombre tale. That levity, however, becomes the film's Achilles heel in my opinion. The final scene, which ends on a comic beat, was like the result of studio meddling. Warner Brothers executive Jack Warner allegedly disliked horror and insisted the audience leave laughing. It's a tonal misstep that undoes some of the film's carefully crafted tension, as far as I'm concerned. Robert Alder, father of Alan Alder, is technically the lead, but comes off rather wooden. Andrea King, as a Nurse Julie, looks the part, but lacks the emotional depth the role demands. Her responses to the increasingly bizarre events feel oddly muted. Victor Franzen fares better as a paralysed pianist Ingram, exuding an entitled coldness that makes his posthumous vengeance feel earned. Ultimately, The Beast with Five Fingers is more than just a quirky horror film about a murderous hand. It's a glimpse of a genre in transition, where horror began to retreat into the psyche, and the supernatural became a mirror for mental disintegration. Its influence rippled outward, inspiring The Thing from the Addams Family TV series, an idea still alive today in The Brilliant Wednesday, proving that not all modern TV is shit where that show is concerned. And of course, it clearly left its mark on Christopher Lee's segment in Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. The Beast with Five Fingers is a most intriguing entry to late 1940s cinema, when the horror genre was at its most sluggish. As so many had seen the real horrors from the Second World War, I'm thinking a little respite was needed during this time. The film gets a 2.5 out of 5 from me. When Gerald McTeam abruptly breaks off his engagement to Kitty and retreats to his ancestral Scottish castle, dear Kitty refuses to accept his sudden coldness and follows him there with her aunt. Upon arrival, they find Gerald drastically changed, aged, distant, and secretive. The castle staff are tight-lipped, the air is rather heavy, and fear surrounds the hedged maze at the heart of the property. As Kitty begins to question Gerald's behaviour and investigates the estate's chilling atmosphere, she unearths a grotesque family secret tied to the castle's twisted legacy. What seems like a tale of emotional estrangement turns into something far more peculiar and far less human. The Maze, released in 1953, is a moody little oddity from Hollywood's first flirtation with 3D. Directed by William Cameron Menzies, who was already a legend for designing the look of Gone with the Wind and directing Invaders from Mars, the film doesn't go for the usual 3D shock tactics of things flying at the screen. Instead, it uses the technology to create a sense of space demonstrated in the long hallways and that ever-present winding garden maze for this film. It's subtle, deliberate, and for me, a bit ahead of its time, I suppose. It's based on a 1945 novella of the same name by Maurice Sandoz, a Swiss author and patron of the arts with a taste for the peculiar. The original edition was illustrated by surrealist Salvador Dali, which chimes with the ethereal nature of this cinematic outing rather fittingly.
Richard Carson, the leading man, was no stranger to genre work. By 1953, he'd already become something of a sci-fi regular, thanks to films like It Came from Outer Space, and later on, The Creature from the Black Lagoon. Before that, he was more of a matinee idol, trained at the University of Minnesota, and once pegged as a serious dramatic actor. But like many in the industry at the time, he found steady work and a kind of cult fame in B pictures. Carson always gave these roles more weight than they probably deserved, which helped ground the more outlandish stories he starred in. Think of him as a steady lily pad in an otherwise murky pond, dependable even if surrounded by some odd things. Veronica Hurst, the female lead, was a British actress whose career was just getting started when The Maze came along. Trained at RADA, she'd been gaining notice for her work on stage and in British cinema, and The Maze was one of her earliest Hollywood ventures. Hurst had the kind of classic screen presence producers loved, sharp, intelligent, and emotionally expressive, and she carried much of the audience's curiosity through the film's slow burn tension in The Maze. Despite the material, she kept things afloat with grace. Afterwards, she mostly returned to British television and films, never quite becoming a household name, but always turning in solid work. Finally, Catherine Emery, playing the elder Aunt Edith, had a much shorter film career, but her background was steeped in serious theatre. In the film The Maze, she added a calm, no-nonsense tone, like the wise toad in a fairy tale, who may not say much, but when she does, you do well to listen. Behind the scenes, production was bumpy. The 3D camera rigs were heavy and limited how Menzies could move the camera. Lighting had to be intense and specific, and many of the cast and crew found the process rather tedious. There were also disagreements over tone. Menzies wanted something moody and artistic, while the studio, Allied Artists, was mostly interested in selling tickets with a flashy hook. The ending, which I won't spoil, was a particular point of contention. Let's just say it leaps in a direction no one really expected. The film's box office performance, not exactly a splash. It made modest returns, but was quickly overshadowed by bigger 3D hits like House of Wax. Critics were divided too. Some appreciated the atmosphere and visual ambition, while others thought it was a bit too slow and too strange. Over time, though, it's developed a bit of a cult following, especially among fans of early 3D and vintage horror oddities. The Maze is an unusual entry into the horror double bills as well, proving the opening season here didn't just follow the mainstream, as we saw with Noah's Ark and the Telltale Heart. One of the queerest in this season of double bills, I found it ethereal but teetering on the dull side. For those that are definitely into slippery metaphors, hidden truths, and things that go ribbit in the night, I would give it 2 out of 5.
Well, that was a fine trip down memory lane.
Thank you for the wonderful oration.
It was a pleasure, but I must toddle off. You want me back for 1976?
Definitely. On the next show, we have some of this. Some of this.
Oh, very well. If you choose to play the leopard, I shall hunt you like a leopard.
And a bit of that.
You spoil them, Crab, you really do.
Well, I aim to please, Mr. Continuity. Here's wishing all of our fiefdom a happy Easter. Do you want to see us out?
Naturally. It's half an hour before I turn into a pumpkin, and I suggest you go up the wooden hill. Tune in next time to look, and look again for more retro treats, and don't forget to subscribe. So from all of us here in the bowels of Television Centre, we wish you a very good night, and from Crab and I, cheerio.
Yeah.